Well, it's about damn time I got started on this thing, right? Today, I'm finally getting hands-on with a classic piece of Ford V8 history, the 351 Windsor. If you've been following this channel for a while, you might recall that years ago I did a deep dive in the 351 Windsor engine. Lots of diagrams, historical tidbits, a bunch of stats, all that good stuff. But this time, I've got the real deal sitting right here in front of me, ready for a teardown. Even better, I'm going to take this mild-mannered Windsor and turn it into a 408 stroker that'll make some serious power. Howdy folks, Ed here. Welcome back to BullnoseGarage. This is going to be the start of a full series where I take a basic 351 stock Windsor, strip it down to bare bones, check every single component, and then rebuild it from the ground up. By the end, I'll have a stroker motor that's ready to rock in just about any Ford project you can dream up. Mine is going to go in my 85 F-150. From tearing this block down and inspecting the crank journals to picking the right parts for the rotating assembly and finally firing it up, I'm going to cover all the steps, share all the notes, and almost certainly screw up a few things because I'm no pro and that's bound to happen.
Hello.
Now, before I start ripping into steel and iron, I want to talk about what makes the 351 Windsor so special. Ford introduced this engine in 1969, and it quickly found a home in everything from Mustangs to trucks. It shares its DNA with the 289 and 302 small blocks, but there are a few key differences. The 351 Windsor is built on a taller deck, which translates into more stroke potential. Basically, the block is a bit beefier all around. It's got bigger main journals, a stronger bottom end, and enough structural integrity to handle the kind of power that I'm aiming for in a stroker build. That's one of the big reasons enthusiasts love turning the Windsor into a 408 or even beyond. They can handle the extra displacement without acting like it's about to explode every time you lay into the gas pedal. So let me get specific on some numbers. The original 51 Windsor typically sports a 4-inch bore and a 3.5-inch stroke. Deck height is in the 9.48 to 9.503 inch range, depending on the year, which is noticeably taller than the 8.2-ish inches you'd see in a 289 or a 302. Compression ratios vary. They were all over the map, depending on the year and emissions regs. Early on, you might have seen ratios around 10.7 to 1, while later engines dipped into the 8.0 to 9.0 to 1 range, like this one here, it's a 95. As for weight, fully dressed with iron heads and intake, you're looking at about 500 to 520 pounds, so it's not exactly a featherweight. But, you know, if you're looking for that, get yourself a 289 if weight savings is your bailiwick. Now, if you ever find yourself staring at a Ford small block and wondering whether you've got a 351 Windsor, a 302, or a 289, here's how to tell without playing the guessing game. So, first off, casting numbers can give you a clue. They're over here underneath on the driver's side, but they don't spell it out for you. Take the F4TE 6015 AA block that I have here, for example. That casting number doesn't straight up scream 351 Windsor, but it does give us some breadcrumbs. The 6015 part, that's just Ford's generic block identifier. It doesn't tell us the displacement. But the F4TE means that it's a 1994 truck block. Now that means it's either a 302 or a 351W. So, how do we know for sure? Well, here's where the physical differences between those two different blocks come in. One of the easiest ways to spot a 351 over a 302 is the deck height. The 351 is noticeably taller, measuring 9.503 inches compared to the 302's 8.206. It's a solid 1.3 inch difference, which spreads the heads further apart, and it makes the engine physically larger. Now, you have to fiddle with it to get it right where 9.5 is, but yeah, you can see it's pretty close right there. Now, if you're tearing into the bottom end, Ford gave the 351 Windsor a much beefier foundation compared to the 302. Now, I don't have this apart, so I can't show you. But one of the quickest tells is the main cap bolts. They're half-inch bolts on a 351 versus the smaller 7/16" bolts on a 302. The extra strength is one of the reasons that the 351 Windsor can handle stroker builds and big power without turning into a pile of metal shavings. I mean, not that the 302 can't do that, but 351 is more robust. Speaking of beefy internals, the crankshaft main journal diameter is another great big difference. The 51 Windsor uses a hefty 3-inch main journal compared to the 302's 2.5 inch. So there you go versus there you go, right? If you got the crank out, a quick measurement will tell you exactly what you're working with. One more subtle clue is the oil filter boss location. On the 51 Windsor, the oil filter mount sits slightly higher on the block than it does on the 302. Now, this is not super easy to spot, especially when the engine is inside of a bay, unless you got them both side by side sitting out. But if you want to look for that, it's just another piece of the puzzle. So, the next time you're looking through a swap meet or picking through a junkyard, keep those checks in mind. Now, if you're looking at a small block Ford installed in an engine bay from the front and trying to decide if it's a 351 Windsor or just another 302, my go-to way, what I think is the easiest, and it's a quick way to tell at a glance, is to check the area around the distributor mount. I'll get you a close-up here in a second, but on a 289 or 302, the pad with the distributor mounts is almost flush with the block. On a 351, there's almost an extra inch of material here. It's much visibly taller because of the deck height. And the taller deck is what gives the 51 Windsor its extra stroke and displacement. So it's the quickest visual indicator, this deck height here around the distributor, to tell if you're looking at a 351 or a 302 if the engine is sitting inside of an engine bay, especially if it's fully dressed. So while I got the engine still together, although it won't be for long, there's a few other things that I want to point out here before I start tearing this thing down completely. First off, we'll take a look at the oil pan. Now, I'll be sure to show you the pickup tube and discuss how it affects oil delivery once I've got all this stuff here off. There's still so much grime. So another thing I want to show you real quick while the engine's still together is that I still have the stock exhaust manifolds on. Now, they're fine for a stock build for the most part, but they're definitely not going to be okay for a 408 stroker. Now, I've left these on here because I didn't want critters and stuff getting in the open holes while I was sitting outside, but now that it's in my garage, I can take those off. I'm not doing that right now, but I am going to show you what I'm replacing them with to give you an idea of the difference. So to do that, let me turn this thing back around. Now, this thing is definitely top heavy, so and it is a beast. So I got to have a little bit of a cheater bar here to see if I can get this thing turned around. There we go. All right. So here you can see the stock exhaust header. Let me turn you down a little bit so you can get a little bit clearer shot. And here is the new one that's going to go on. These are long tube headers. I got them. Actually, I got them for free from Dynavox. So they provided those for me. I've got a video on these where I'll show you what these are all about. But yeah, man, that's gonna look pretty sweet and sound pretty sweet. Yeah, looking forward to getting those on. And lastly, while we're here and this thing is still together, you can take a look at the stock intake manifold up here. You know what? Actually, let me get this plate off the top here and I can show you what I'm talking about. All right, now that I've got the plate off the top, we can talk about this stock intake manifold. Now, there's a couple things going on here that need to be addressed as far as my build is concerned. First, these stock units are okay for low-end grunt and stock applications, but for a 408 stroker build, they just don't flow enough air. So I'll be definitely looking at some aftermarket intakes for this. And also, because this one is a fuel-injected intake, not a carbureted intake, I will be swapping this to a carbureted engine. And you guys may go, oh my God, carbureted engine, why would you ever do that? Fuel injection is so much better and more reliable, and all this other kind of stuff that people end up doing. So a couple things. One, I've never messed with carburetors before, and so I don't have that little bit of jadedness that some of the carburetor guys have. And I need to get that. I really need to figure out, I need to internalize why carburetors are so horrible, right? So I want to build my engine with a carburetor. I also really like the old school feel of that, and I like the old school look. So if I do get tired of the carburetor, even though I've got a carbureted intake, I'll just get myself like a Sniper EFI or something like that that looks like a carburetor, still gives you that old school look, but it will work with the intake that I've got, but still gives me the modern sort of drivability and reliability of an EFI setup. So that's my plan there. So once I got everything taken apart and disassembled, I'm going to dedicate an entire episode to walking through each of these parts so I can show you exactly what it does and why it's important. And I'll lay out the crank, rods, pistons, heads, and anything else that I've yanked off this block right here, and I'll put them on a bench, and I'll give you a crash course on small block Ford anatomy. Honestly, it's going to help me brush up on my own knowledge too, because there's nothing like pointing at each component and telling you exactly what it does and figuring out how it all comes together to keep your mind on track. It'll be good for me before I build a new engine too, so we're going to do that. Lord knows I need as much help as I can get. If you're wondering why I picked the 51 Windsor for a project like this, one, you're obviously not a subscriber to the channel, and two, let me sum it up. There's a ton of them out there, it's durable, and the aftermarket part support is insane. There's a lot of options for intakes, exhausts, all kinds of different stroker kits, and just pretty much whatever you're looking for. So as I'm going along, I'm also going to chat about the history of the Windsor, because it's really interesting, and that's part of the fun for me. I really like digging into that stuff. So now here's the part that I'm going to get yelled at for. In the next episode, I'm going to start tearing this thing down. Oh my God, Ed, all you ever do is flap your gums. I know, right? I've been waiting on this for 4 years, but I want to do it right and take it slow, so I'm taking it one episode at a time. Next time, I promise, I'll talk to you about this engine. I will be taking it apart. I'm going to show you exactly how I pull the heads, yank the cam, and see if there's any hidden damage lurking down into this block. Right? I'm going to measure the bores to see how much I need to overbore for my stroker pistons. Now, hopefully, I'll get lucky and this thing is basically still stock. I think it is. And if it is, then I should probably only have to go 30 over. But you never know, maybe I won't. And that's part of the adventure. So once I know the status, I'll pick out a nice stroker kit that matches my goals, something that'll give me a nice bump in torque and horsepower, get me up to 408, and something that won't turn this engine into a ticking time bomb. China, excuse me. So that's the plan, and I can't wait to get my hands dirty. If you love classic small block Fords or just enjoy watching some dude in his garage try not to drop a cylinder head on his foot, then this series is definitely going to be for you. I'm designing this series so that some guy like me who's never done this before can start from episode 1 and work all the way through, and by the end should know everything they got to know to build the same kind of engine that I'm building here. And that's why I'm taking it slow. I know that you Ford guys, the guys that have built engines before, probably look at this and going, oh my gosh, this guy is so slow. It's like watching molasses go uphill. But you're probably not who this series is for, but you might find it interesting. So I hope that you do. So guys, do myself and yourself a favor and make sure that you're subscribed and have those notifications turned on, because next time, I swear to you that you see this engine, I will be tearing it apart to see what's salvageable and set the stage for the 408 stroker build. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of head scratching for me because I've never done it before. It's a big task, and I'm sure there'll be a little bit more than just a little bit of cussing under my breath. But I'm looking forward to it. Let me know if you guys have done a stroker Windsor yourself and how it went, whether it was a dream come true or a frustrating odyssey of stripped bolts and missing gaskets, because it is intimidating for a first timer. But I want to hear about it. If you have any other questions, comments, concerns, gripes, internet ramblings, as always, stick them below. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you next time.
She's rough around the edges, but she's doing fine. Tinkering away, getting things to shine. At BullnoseGarage, she's considered divine.